Good morning, fathers of daughters. This is F&B Martin. Welcome to another live stream. Grow that YouTube channel. All fathers are welcome, regardless of your ethnic group, background, and/or culture. Welcome, fathers. How are we doing today? Sunday. It's a little dreary outside in Denver, Colorado. We got a lot of rain. Not a lot of rain, but it's just overcast today. So we're going to take the W for that. Spring is here. We'll be in the summer next month in June, but Colorado springs are amazing. So here we go. Fathers, we are here today for a live stream, Grow That, loneliness of our daughters. And the reason I want to talk about the loneliness of our daughters is because today we're dealing with Gen Z and Gen Alpha daughters. And I've got 3 excellent videos today to share with you, fathers of daughters, to have a open discussion about loneliness of our daughters. And when I say loneliness of our daughters, it can come in many forms. It can come in mental health. Is the biggest form that I'm actually speaking about. Just being lonely by themselves, not particularly having acceptance in their peer groups, getting along with their peer groups, and just finding themselves as young women being by themselves, cutting off friends, and just being by themselves. So fathers of daughters, we have to pay attention to that and have to be aware of mood changes, mood swings, emotional highs, emotional lows with our teenage daughters, okay? The videos I'm going to share today are speaking about mental health and the mental health crisis that is happening in the United States of America with our children, particularly our little girls. A lot of them they're catching hell, right? And I'm the father of 4 adult daughters, 35, 29, 26, and 24. And although my daughters are adult women and they're living in their best lives and doing their thing, they didn't have to experience a lot of what today's young ladies and your daughters are experiencing. And it's just I come from Gen X. I'm a Gen X father. So it's a totally different world. I have 2 daughters that are millennials and I have 2 daughters that are Gen Z. And it's just a different world today. And, after COVID in 2020, a lot of kids just never rebounded from that. And I think when kids went from school to being isolated and not among their peer group, a lot of things happened to a lot of these children. Because I know one of the things, working in K-12 education for 10 years as a former teacher and dean of students, peer groups are a lifesaver for a lot of these children because of the socialization, being able to hang out with their friends and see them on a daily basis and, spend time with them and those sort of things, building relationships with other children who don't look like them or talk like them. And for a lot of these children, being at home for some of these kids is not a safe place. Being at school is actually the safest place for them, which is crazy, but that's what it is for a lot of today's children. Being at school is safer for them being at home. And I'm not talking about from the abuse standpoint. I'm talking about from the isolation standpoint, from the emotional standpoint, from the disconnect standpoint of not having a relationship with their parents, their mother or their father. If they have both parents in their life, they may only have a mother. They may have a deceased father. They may only have a father. They may have a deceased mother. They may not have both parents. They may come from a household of divorced parents. So there's just a lot of things that are going on in today's world with our baby girls. And when you add social media on top of that, let me tell you, when I'm researching the topics I'm going to present as a girl dad, right? And I'm spending this time doing research and looking at all these videos that I'm providing for fathers through education and information. I'm really seeing a lot of disconnect from a lot of our baby girls, from a lot of young people, boys and girls. And it's just real interesting how, with all of this technology and as efficient as it is, you would think it would make life easier. It has actually made life a lot harder. I didn't grow up on social media. I'm Gen X. And I'm so glad I didn't. It's crazy because when I'm doing my research and just seeing all the pressure that little girls, young people, boys and girls are under, it's a totally different generation than mine. So I'm not one, as a father, being Gen X. I know how we were raised. We were latchkey kids where we pretty much had to raise ourselves. You know, our parents were at work most days and we had to get ourselves to and from school. A lot of us had to cook for our younger siblings, and we had to do a lot of things. So our pressures were a lot different, but Gen X ended up okay. So I don't compare generations. I look at generations as different, sort of like compartments. I look at generations because each generation is going to do things differently, right? And Gen X, we're built different because we had to figure things out. Nothing was given to us, and we just did not. We had to figure a lot of things out, man. And when I think about today's children, particularly Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who's coming out of them, a lot of these kids they're just disabled by their parents because their parents are raising them different, which that's not a problem with. But when you disable your child, a lot of times these kids are just disconnected. They're not connected spiritually. They're not connected religiously. There's such a emphasis out there in today's world, anti-God, anti-spirit, anti-everything. And we live in a world where so many parents just live in a free-for-all. Whatever happens, happens. It is what it is. They believe that giving their children authorization to make their own decisions on their own best behalf, because they're a quote unquote own little people, that these children are going to make their best decisions. And it's just crazy for me as a parent. My daughters were not allowed to not be guided by me or their mother. That wasn't an option. Okay. They weren't raised in a household, you do what I say. They were raised in a household of explanation. They were raised in a household of answering their why questions. They were raised in their household of seeing both their parents go to work every day and come home every day. Right? So they didn't have the traumas that a lot of these children have today. And a lot of these traumas that are coming from the house are self-inflicted by these children's parents. So many parents today, they just don't get it. And I see it in social media. When I'm looking at a lot of these baby girls and how they're on Instagram and TikTok and barely wearing any clothing, showing their bodies, that is a reflection of the mother and father where they come from in the house. My daughters were never allowed to leave the house showing their bodies, looking scantily, or as a good friend of mine says, looking whorish. And it's crazy to me when I look at so many of these videos and I see these mothers a lot of times doing more than their daughters, and just so many parents on Instagram making their kids record themselves, and it's all contributing to their mental health breakdown. I believe that because I'm seeing too many videos. Now, I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube other than when I'm doing research. I probably spend about 5 to 10 hours a week on these social media platforms because I have a very, very busy life. And I get busy every week doing my research for my live streams. So I'm coming across a lot of different videos as far as research. And there's just no way, if I had a Gen Alpha daughter that was a teenager, they would be doing what they're doing. I just, parents, you got to pull it back. You really, really have to pull it back, because your children are suffering, and they're going to continue to suffer because so many parents have not set boundaries. And fathers, we cannot allow their mothers to do whatever they want to do and make the decisions without their father's leadership and guidance. It's just crazy to me when I see on Instagram and TikTok with these young girls that are teenagers, because it's not going to turn out good for them. Little girls battle with their mothers. I've never met a child. My daughters battle with their mother. Okay? So that's a woman DNA thing. They're going to battle. Even if mothers raise them the best way that they can, it's innate in their DNA to battle. It just is. There's always a competition going on with women. It's crazy. But that's what it is. Fathers, girl dads, okay? So I've got 3 excellent videos, girl dads, that I want to share with you, fathers of daughters, and just want you to process what's going on, what you're seeing when we're talking about mental health and mental illness when it comes to our teenage children, particularly our little girls, okay? And this is not the time, as a father of daughters, girl dad, this is not the time to be checking out on your teenage child. You cannot. You cannot check out on them and pretend that you're not seeing what you're seeing and pretending that it's just going to go away. You better address it, okay? Through conversations, you better address it with professional help if they need professional help. But you better be speaking with your daughters and your sons. Because what I'm seeing is just crazy to me, the disconnect of today's parents with their Gen Alpha kids and Gen Z kids. Like I said, my daughters are all adult women, and they're amazing, and God bless them. So that's what I'm bringing today, fathers. And I felt this live stream was necessary and it was needed, okay? So welcome all fathers. Thank you for tuning in. And let's take a look at these 3 great videos I'm presenting today for education and instruction and information. Okay, fathers, let me get this first one set up. Let's see. Okay, fathers, first video. It is about, it's almost 30 minutes long, first video.
Teens under pressure like never before.
We hear you because everybody's struggling.
Mental health is the existential challenge of our time.
Staggering new statistics shining a light on a troubling trend.
Teen girls are experiencing record high levels of violence, sadness, and suicide risk.
The mental health crisis is an epidemic.
High schoolers today have so much more pressure.
Growing concerns over social media.
We all get FOMO.
What lifelines can we provide?
Schools are on the front lines of this crisis.
It's time to adapt.
Teens under pressure. Mental health and social media.
Young people are in crisis. That is the finding of a troubling new CDC report on mental health. But what is it that's behind this trend? I'm Savannah Sellers, and over the next 30 minutes, we'll look at the causes of this mental health challenge, including the role social media is playing, and also, importantly, what can be done about it. First, though, let's dig into those trends. They show in 2021, 42% of high schoolers felt persistently sad or hopeless. That's up 14% from 2011. 29% experienced poor mental health, and 22% of students seriously considered attempting suicide. Then there are the female students specifically who are faring worse. 57% of teen girls experience persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. That is a jump of 21% in just the last decade. But behind all of these numbers, there are real teens. I recently sat down with a group of high schoolers in Fairfax, Virginia, because we wanted them to help lead this conversation, to take us beyond just these disturbing statistics. I started by asking if they are among those who have felt sad or hopeless. Have you all, I guess, if you have, raise your hand, experienced that?
Absolutely.
And would you say all your friends have?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
Have any of you ever been speaking with a friend and thought, I got to tell somebody else about what I just heard about how they're doing?
Yeah, I have at one point.
Wow.
It was a friend of mine. For a while, he was having suicidal ideations. I brought it up with the counselor and his parents. And honestly, one of the main things that I found was he didn't really respond well to emotions. He kind of had cut them off for himself. It's just I think that's our root of the problem, is that a lot of people try to cut off their emotions.
I think it's the little things that matter, like the simple little, like, hey, how you doing? Or like, if you see your friend in the hallway, like dap them up and just say what's up, just go to class and stuff like that. Like, I think those little things, they can really go a long way in terms of how someone feels during that day.
Sometimes with the telling part, you have to be able to live with the fact that that person might not be your friend from that point going, but you still might have saved their life, or you still might have made them happier. It's also like, who do I tell?
Yeah.
Who can you go to? Because obviously we have like counselors and social workers at school and stuff, but it's like, can I really tell them? Like, what are they really going to do about that? So there's also an issue of who are some trusted adults that I feel could actually help the situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And on that note of like, who do I go to? It's also, what will they do successfully? Like, I've had that fear of like, okay, I know I need to tell a trusted adult, but will they actually make the situation better, or will it go even worse?
How many of you, do you all know someone who has confided in you that they were having suicidal thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every single one of you. Why do you think it is that we're all having such a hard time?
Part of me feels like we see what's going around in the world. We see what's going on within society. We can turn on the news and hear about a death, an accident, a murder, things like that. And we've almost become numb to it.
I just think technology has done a lot of great things for us, but it also has just completely overwhelmed us with so much of the bad news. So
definitely. So it sounds like what I'm hearing right now is current events totally impact you. Is that right? Like, you feel the stress of what is going on in the world that's negative.
I don't even watch the news anymore, but I hear it all around me. Everybody, like one person will say something and everybody will hear about it.
I think a really sad example of this, it was in my first period class, maybe a week or two ago. There was some doors slamming towards down the hall, and it was very, very loud. Like, they were slamming them hard. And some people in my class were wondering, are those gunshots? Like, should we lock the door? It's just become so, even though it's such a small, tiny chance, it's still high enough that we are fearful that, oh crap, that can happen to us, because it can happen to us. It's not like we're immune to all of this.
I have a show, an NBC News show on Snapchat, and I asked those viewers to tell me, what are some things that you'd want to ask officials in a mental health capacity. The overwhelming response that I heard about was the anxiety that people are feeling about school shootings.
Crazy how like lockdown drills and stuff like that. Like, it's obviously, to stay safe is nice, but even having to worry about that is crazy.
And you do worry about it.
Yeah, I feel like everyone does, and at this point, unfortunately, should. There's always that possibility in the back of your mind, because you spend more time at school a day than you do at home.
What impact does social media have on you all? I think, as you pointed out already, there's a lot of good technology, but is this a factor in your negative thoughts and negative feelings?
During the pandemic, everyone was all on social media, like, oh, today I'm doing this, I'm baking today, I'm doing my Chloe Ting workouts, or whatever the case may be. And it was easy to just see all the great things that other people were doing and be like, oh, maybe I should be doing that, or I'm not doing enough.
So that comparison trap.
Yeah.
Negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like we all kind of get on social media for that kind of idea of escapism, and then it kind of just goes sideways in the sense where it can kind of become a trap of like, oh, I saw this video of somebody who's like working on their applications right now. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Why am I on TikTok? You know, things like that. It just kind of becomes a constant battle of like the good and the bad. And every day somehow they're outweighing each other.
I think people also get really, really comfortable in hatred. They get really comfortable in that negative view on social media. Like you're sitting there, you're scrolling, and you're feeling unproductive, lazy, that you can't do anything right, that something's wrong with you just because everybody on social media has their lives together or is projecting that. And you're sitting there and you can't get off your phone. You're like frozen to it.
Could you each just kind of tell me in a sentence or close to it, the main thing that you want older people listening to know about what it's like to be in high school?
Sometimes there's times where I just need to vent to somebody and I'm not expecting a response. You know, a response is cool. I'd appreciate it, but it's not my expectation. I just need to get what's in my head out and just tell it to somebody, whether it be my mom, uncle, aunt, family member, counselor. I'd say, yeah, just acknowledge their feelings and just be open-minded as well.
When they try and reach out to you or they try and reach out to somebody and try and actually express what they're feeling and try and actually get help for anything, I feel like you shouldn't immediately go to blaming them or judging them. Is just have an open mind.
I would say evaluate your role within the relationships that you have, whether it be students, your children, relatives, and see if you're truly supporting them.
I'd honestly just say, forget any ego, forget any pride. It's something that I've noticed has caused a lot of problems whenever parents are interacting with their kids.
And I want to say, like, times have changed now. They're removing the stigmatism from mental health, and people are being more open with their emotions, and times have changed. So it's time to adapt and help the youth who are in need of it.
Let's take a closer look at one number again. 57% of female students saying they felt persistently sad or hopeless. Our health and medical reporter, Erica Edwards, joins me now here on set. Hi, Erica. So I know that you took this deeper dive into our teen girls, and I think there's a really important distinction here. It's not what's wrong with our girls. It's what's happening to them. What did you find?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, the issues facing teen girls these days are wide ranging. I spoke with two just incredible young women who spoke about sexual assault, body image issues, even intense cases of FOMO, or fear of missing out.
So what do you want to do after the SAT?
16-year-old Sophie Nicetune is the go-to girl when a friend needs advice, feels sad, or simply needs to vent.
I don't like to see my friends down.
Sophie's empathy inspired her to create BreatheSafeSpace.com, where girls can write about their mental health struggles anonymously.
It's supposed to be something where you know you're not alone.
It offers a glimpse into what's driving their sadness. One said she feels pressured to be the best. Another writing, I always feel the need to suck in my stomach or wear oversized clothing so nobody will see my extra fat.
When you look through the stories on your website, do you see any themes?
Yeah, the majority of them are about sexual assault and rape.
One girl said she felt unsupported after a sexual assault. You put yourself in that position is the sentence that came out of my parents' mouth when I told them I had been raped.
Our girls are just being faced with a barrage of stresses and new experiences that are really beyond their ability to cope.
Child psychologist Nancy Cunningham says girls are particularly vulnerable to a variety of stressors.
A lot of it is academic stress, projects, tests, and on top of that, having friendship drama.
14-year-old Harper Drake says social media has taken friendship drama to new levels.
We all get FOMO. So if somebody is posting on TikTok or posting on Instagram or even just like a Snapchat story, you can see if they're all together.
And after-school activities can be intense and time-consuming, leaving little time in many girls' lives to just be girls.
Erica, such great points made there. It makes you just think you get it. I mean, if we were growing up with all of this information at our fingertips all the time, you might feel this way too. It's very tough. Also, one of the things in there just startling, Sophie's saying that the posts she sees most are about sexual assault and rape. You, of course, know that there was another disturbing stat in this CDC report that says 14% of girls have been forced to have sex. I brought that up with this panel of teens that I spoke with when I was in Virginia. Let's listen to a little bit of that. Does that surprise you all?
No,
Unfortunately not particularly.
which is a really sad thing to say.
Yeah. Why not? What have you heard? What do you know from friends?
I mean, there's just kind of this unspoken language, I want to say, of like, let's say you know a friend who's going to a football game, you tell them, oh, it's at such and such school. Well, be careful. That area is known for, not having guys who can control themselves and things like that. So it's sad because we all know, but it's like just now that the public's kind of coming to that realization.
I take the bus to work sometimes. And when I take the bus to work, I wear a fake wedding ring. I wear like baggy clothes and just make sure that I look like not a woman. And I have to do these things just to protect myself. Like, it's very unfortunate, but that's the way it is. It's normalized. And yeah.
Exactly. It's so normalized to an extent where like nobody's asking, why are you wearing a fake wedding ring? Like it's reached a point where it's known amongst us, but it's not necessarily concerning to outside parties.
It's just taken in stride. It's like, oh, I did this to make sure I wouldn't get raped on the street. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Again, high school students that we're hearing that from, teenagers. Erica, this survey was done in 2021 that we're taking these stats from. What was it about that year that we may have seen this spike in sexual assaults?
Yeah, so this was a time when many kids were in remote schooling. They were locked down at home in what should have been a safe place. But sexual assault experts remind us that such attacks do generally occur in families or with other close family relationships and neighborhoods, things like that. And so, in fact, lockdown may have actually increased exposure to these individuals in some cases.
Oh, it's just heartbreaking to hear. What role do you think social media plays here?
Yeah, rape crisis centers tell me that they saw a huge increase in cyber sexual violence, like online stalking during the pandemic. I talked with some high school girls who said that they think these numbers are underestimates. In fact, many girls are just simply too afraid to speak up.
Oh my gosh, I also heard from the teens that I spoke with about this misogynistic content that we're seeing sort of flourish online, these rabbit holes that teen boys can end up down. They think that that might be impacting some of their behavior, at least from what they've seen in their schools.
Correct. I mean, it's not just what's happening with girls or what's happening around girls, but also what's happening around boys. What are they exposed to? That's another part of that.
No is in crisis. Please call 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Also on your screen, some other sources to reach out to. Well, the Surgeon General says social media is having a direct impact on the mental health of many teens, as we were just discussing. Coming up, he tells me why he thinks it's time for the government to step in. Now, teens may be under pressure, but many schools are too under-resourced to tackle this complicated challenge. That's why the Department of Education says it's providing $188 million to help fund more mental health resources in districts that need it most. I spoke to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona and Surgeon General Vivek Murthy about what Murthy calls the existential crisis of our time.
Youth mental health is a full-blown crisis in our country right now, and the numbers tell us such. But the truth is, the numbers have been telling us this for years. This situation has been getting worse. And what we have to do right now is make sure that, number one, kids who need help can get it. Number two, we've got to invest in prevention. We've got to stop this at the root. And there are many factors that are contributing to the mental health crisis. And finally, we've got to address the shame and stigma that still surround mental health. Too many kids are feeling inhibited about coming forward and asking for help because they feel like something's wrong with them if they're struggling with their mental health and that it's their fault. And we've got to change that.
What specifically is happening to our girls? Why is it worse for them?
We see record levels of loneliness, among kids in general, including among young girls, and that increases the risk for depression, for anxiety. But what we're also seeing is the experience of technology, of social media in particular, has not been healthy or positive for many people. And this is especially true for young girls, for whom their sense of self, their confidence in their own body, is adversely affected often by their participation in social media.
It's important also to realize that high schoolers today have so much more pressure to do well, to get good grades, that everything is almost like a competition now in high school. So we have to recognize that they're under a lot more stress, and we have to recognize that when thinking about mental health planning.
You've mentioned a couple times now social media. I don't think we can have this conversation without diving in a little bit on that. And this also came recently that Senator Hawley just announced that he's introducing legislation where he wants to make the minimum age 16 across the board. Is that something either of you are in support of?
Well, I think I'm really glad that we're having this conversation about how to make social media safer for our kids. I do think that the age limit is a problem. I do think 13 is too young for kids to be using social media in its current form. Because look, at the age of 13 in early adolescence, your brain is still developing. You're developing your sense of self. You're building your self-esteem. You're building your relationships, and all of that makes for a very sensitive time when you're young. Right now, most of the products in my home had to meet some sort of safety standard in order to be sold, right? To make sure that they were safe for consumers. Where are those safety standards for social media, especially given how often our kids are using it and how ubiquitous it is? But finally, also, we've got to demand transparency from social media companies when it comes to the data that they are collecting on the impact of social media on the mental health of young people.
I do believe that 13 open access to social media is too young. It reminds me a little bit about my generation, the Joe Camel targeting cigarettes toward children, or now we're seeing vape products being sold to children, targeting children. The same is true with social media. They target vulnerable children and they're preying on them.
I'm happy you invoked tobacco because I think it's an interesting comparison. Of course, what's on a box of cigarettes? A Surgeon General's warning. Do you think that social media needs to come with some type of warning? And would you go a step further than you already have in trying to enforce what you see as harm there?
Well, I think we have to go beyond warnings. I think the data has been telling us more and more clearly that there are significant numbers of kids who are harmed by their use of social media. I think what we need are safety standards and requirements around data transparency, and those actually have to be enforced. We need age-based regulations that also need to be enforced. But I also think that parents, we need to create spaces in a child's life that are free of social media. That could be the dinner table. It could be around bedtime. It could be time when they're with family or friends in person. That time is really important. We've got to protect it.
It's a great point, which makes me want to ask, you say that needs to be enforced, that age. Does that mean that you want to see legislation around what age kids are, at least by the apps, supposed to be on them?
Well, I do think this is a place where the government has to act, because the companies on their own are not going to set the right age limit and enforce them, because they aren't doing it right now. And social media has been around for years. So we can't wait any longer for the system to self-correct. I will tell you that the number one question I get from parents when I travel around the country, when we talk about mental health, is about social media. Parents ask me, is social media hurting my children? And the sad answer is, I think for many children, the answer is yes.
Schools are notoriously underfunded, teachers underpaid, and we don't have enough of them as it is. Right now, is too much being asked of teachers in classrooms?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Teachers get into the profession naturally because they care about kids. They want to help. And I think we've asked too much of our teachers, and it's not fair. And we must provide them the support, because if we provide them the support, our students will be better. We need to make sure that teachers have support in their schools, enough social workers, school counselors. The ratio in this country in some places is 500 students to one counselor. So when we talk about addressing mental health, are we serious? With a 500 to 1 ratio, are we serious about helping students address what needs they have? So it ends up happening is the classroom teacher is addressing a lot of this. That's why I'm proud of the money that we put here, $188 million to really support it.
We teamed up with Teen Vogue for this special to help reach those most impacted by this issue. I wrote an op-ed for them that you can find on their website, and Teen Vogue features reporter Fortessa Latifi gave us some tips on how to focus on the good when spending time on social media.
The TikTok algorithm is so eerily good at sending you content that relates to your life. I think that the critical thing about social media with young people is that you need to take what's good for you from it and making community with people that you might not have found otherwise. You're seeing people present their identities without this level of sheen that we used to have on social media. And so when that's presented to you, it can help you realize things about yourself. To have a positive relationship with social media, it's really important to find your little corner of it, because it is so vast and if you find the space where people like you are talking about things that you want to talk about, it can be really helpful. I would also say it's really important to establish boundaries. You don't want to be scrolling on TikTok or Instagram all day long. Even with authentic influencers, it is still just a highlight reel. People are showing you what they want to show you. And so you have to remember that your actual life cannot be compared to people's social media feeds. When you're young and you're having mental health struggles, it can feel like you're alone. And for Gen Z, they can just go online and see that they're not. And I think that's really powerful.
NBC News contacted social media companies for their response, including TikTok, Meta, and Snap. Up next, expert advice on how to reach out to a teen who's struggling. So we spent a lot of time on the stresses teens are facing, but now we need to talk about what can be done to help. To get some insight, I spoke to Dr. Kathleen Ethier, Director of the Division of Adolescent and School Health at the CDC. Hi, Dr. Ethier. Thank you so much for joining us on this. It's so good to talk with somebody who was involved in this study. And I know you've called the CDC data on youth mental health devastating. Students talk to me about the importance of talking about it. So how can we facilitate conversations with students? What should you say to try to get a student to trust you, to open up to you?
You know, I think that connection, that sense of connection between young people and adults, whether that's their parents, community members, teachers, school counselors, is incredibly important and can really bridge that gap between how students are feeling and solutions to help them feel better and to do better. And so a lot of it is asking them questions, asking them how they're feeling, asking them what's going on with them, noticing when there are changes in their behavior, when there are changes in their eating or their sleeping patterns for parents, changes in what's going on in their classrooms, to really be attentive. I think that's the most important thing that adults can do, is to pay attention and to ask good questions. That leads to everything else.
Absolutely. One of the things, too, that I heard from these teenagers, several groups of them actually, that was interesting was the ones who have made a relationship with their school counselor couldn't speak highly enough about it. That relationship can make such a difference. What do you think should be done there? Is it replicating that elsewhere? Is it encouraging more students to talk to that trusted adult? How can we make more teens benefit from that?
Obviously, school counselors are incredible. I mean, they are, there are not nearly enough of them. And it would be great if more schools had, kind of a smaller ratio between the number of students and the number of counselors that are available to them, so that there were, fewer students per counselor. But I don't think that, across the country that's going to happen. We just don't have enough counselors. So I do think that while they're probably the best trained, there are things that we can do in schools, in communities, in homes to help adults be that trusted person for young people. It doesn't have to be a counselor. All of us, I think, remember that teacher who cared about us and cared about our success and did things for us that helped us feel connected. And it's that sense of connectedness that is really the most important thing.
For anyone at home who has children who's hearing these headlines and is just scared, and maybe they're having a difficult time kind of having that relationship with their teenager at a certain point, what advice do you have? What's the first thing that should happen in homes, at dinner tables?
Notice what's going on with your kids and ask them questions. And I also want to say, for parents of little ones, start those conversations about mental health early. Talk about feelings, talking about, I feel happy, I feel sad. What do we do about that? What do we do with negative emotions? How do we manage them? How do we negotiate anger? How do we negotiate frustration? Because if you start that really early, by the time they get to be teens, when, we all know that teens, have lots of ups and downs, you've already started that conversation. But if you have a teen now, it is not too late to stay involved. It's not too late to find out what they're doing, who they're with, who their friends are, how they're spending their time, and to ask good questions and to ask them about their feelings.
Dr. Ether, we appreciate your time and such important advice on such an important topic.
Thank you so much.
Once again, if you or someone you know is in crisis, please call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or reach out to the other resources on your screen. Now, mental health can be an uncomfortable topic to discuss, certainly to share your own experiences. I know every time I have, it's been somewhat scary, but the teens I spoke with said that discussion is an important part of reaching those who are struggling. Knowing you're not alone is just a big part of this battle. I hope we can continue the conversation, and I thank you for making the time for it by listening tonight. I'm Savannah Sellers.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Okay, fathers, excellent video. What are your thoughts? Fathers, I need all fathers on board. I need all fathers on deck. Because this is serious. You see what's going on with a lot of our baby girls' fathers. And more and more videos will start being made about Gen Alpha. Because the young ladies and young men you're seeing now, they're the youngest of Gen Z. They're 14, 15, 16, no, 15, 16, 17, 18. So they're exiting high school, getting ready to exit high school, and Gen Alpha, boys and girls, are up next. As you can see, fathers, one of the things is, I know a lot of parents talk about the government, but we're allowing the government in our lives because a lot of parents are making the wrong decisions in the best interest of their children. So if the government sees something wrong that's been going on for years, they're going to do something about it, regardless of what parents think. So parents need to take this back, and you got to be paying attention. Fathers of daughters, grow dads, you have to be paying attention. Pretty much in every one of my videos, I always talk about my professional background, 20 years in the criminal justice system, 10 years in K-12 education. I'm a former state of Colorado juvenile probation officer. I'm a former teacher and dean of students in K-12 education. So fathers, we have to attack this thing because it appears it's only getting worse when it comes to the mental health. And when you listen to these kids, the next video I'm going to show is kids are going to be explaining to parents what they need to be doing, right? Because a lot of parents, they're just disconnected from their children. They are. And that's not something, the government can't fix that. You're the parent. You have to make sure you know what's going on with your child. You have to have that relationship with your kids. This is not a government issue. It becomes a government issue when it gets out of control. Then the government's going to step in. And a lot of parents ain't going to like what the government's going to do. So I need all fathers on board and on deck. Because mothers can't do this by themselves, and they shouldn't be put in a position to be addressing the mental health of your children by themselves. This is crazy to me. I'm so grateful and so thankful my daughters are adult women. I didn't go through any of this with my baby girls. And yes, the internet was taken off, but I made sure what they were exposed to as best I could in my home. I had these discussions. I started speaking to my daughters at 5 years old about their bodies. Working in the criminal justice system as a state juvenile probation officer, I had a lot of little girls that didn't have fathers. Didn't turn out well. They didn't have any uncles. They didn't have any men that led them. So it didn't turn out well for a lot of these little girls. And my daughters were not going to be victims or victimized. by society. Not an option. Not as long as I had breath in me and I was living. That ain't happening. So, fathers, we have to, we got to take the lead on this. We have to take the lead on this. And you have to be paying attention and listening to your children. You got to know who their friends are. You got to know who they're hanging out with. You got to know what they're doing. Because if you don't, it could take any, normally kids they're disconnected with their parents. They're doing a bunch of stuff. Their parents are just like shocked. Well, I didn't know. Because you're not paying attention. Because you're not listening. If you don't know when your kid's behavior is changing, that's on you, parents. That's not the counselor's fault at school. That's not the teacher's fault at school. That's where they spend a lot of their time. And when you listen to a lot of these kids, they're living in fear. They're worried about school shootings. I think about coming from Gen X, how we used to, and it's apples and oranges when I'm getting ready to compare to school shootings, right? And school shooting drills. You remember back in the 70s when I was a kid growing up, we used to have to do the drills. Back in the day, the drills for we were being attacked by Russia, the nuclear bombs, the nuclear bomb drills. If you're Gen X, you remember those drills we used to do, get underneath your desk and, that sort of thing. We practice those drills once or twice a year. These kids are actually having to live, not only practicing their drills, they're so fearful, and so many of these kids are becoming so paranoid from slamming doors. I can't imagine being in middle school or high school worrying about being murdered. I cannot process that coming from Gen X. And this is why I don't compare generations. The only thing I disagree with in this video when they were talking about kids have more competition today in school, I totally disagree with that. I was sharing with some young people a while back, being Gen X, I remember being in junior high school because it was junior high, not middle school. So junior high was 7th, 8th, 9th grade. High school was 10, 11, 12 when I was in school. I remember being in junior high school. When you took a test, right? You're talking about mental health. Okay. When you took a test, our grades used to be posted on the outside of the door for every student to see for a week. So if we took a test on a Monday and that test got posted that Wednesday, it was on the outside of the door every day for a week. So all the girls knew who the dumb boys were. All the little girls knew who was messing around in class. You couldn't get away with that today. There would be lawsuits talking about unfair. I can't even imagine. But when I was in junior high school, fathers, we took a test. Every test I took in junior high school and high school, they posted the grades of every student on the outside of the door. How would you parents deal with that today? How would you like that happening to your children today? Because that's what happened to Gen X. I'm telling you. In those Gen X parents that are out there, they'll tell you the exact same thing I'm telling you is facts. They'll tell you the truth. Our grades got posted. We didn't have a choice. We got embarrassed. So that's just what it was. Okay, fathers, let's get into this next video. Let me get it set up. Let me see. I apologize. I'm not looking at my live stream on YouTube, but apparently I'm having some lag issues with my internet. Hopefully it's not too bad, but it appears that's what's happening. So I apologize to you fathers now if there's lag issues with my own internet. We're overcast here today in Colorado. I'm not sure if the internet is having issues because there's no sun out. I don't know. But technology is technology. It is what it is. Okay, fathers, let me get this set up here. Let me see. Okay. Okay, fathers, here is video number 2.
So this is for all of you. Help me help parents watching right now who have teenagers and they're really worried about them and they can't tell if they're just a little sad, a little blue, a little tired, or really are showing some signs of something that could be more than that. How should parents approach their kids?
Well, I know that when I got approached with the idea of therapy, it was in a calm, not like invasive space. So definitely sitting your child down, making sure that they know that they still love them and they will still care about them, but introducing it slowly, saying like, oh, there's a person I want you to meet, or, oh, I think we should start, openly communicating with the idea of therapy, or even just going on YouTube and looking up like what a therapy session could look like, and making sure that the child definitely feels comfortable, so we don't create another environment where a whole nother generation goes with thinking that you're either crazy or not crazy.
Right. Wow, that's great. Well said. Chris, what about you?
I mean, I think that the most important thing for parents would be to be compassionate, right? To kind of try to understand that we come from a different time than they do, and that all these problems necessarily aren't as bad as some might make them seem, right? And I also think that something that's super important is that, like, at least personally, right, I was very anti-therapy at the beginning, right? When my parents first came to me and they told me about this, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And I think that that's something important for parents to accept. But then later on, like, I kind of came around to the idea, kind of got adjusted to it. And I thought that it would be a good idea. So I think that that parents should kind of approach their kids with this, but I definitely don't think that it should be something that's forced. Because the second that you force therapy or you force someone to do it like this, they're going to completely close off and it's not going to help at all, right? And then at that point, we're talking about like the spending of the money. You're just spending money for nothing at that point, right? And you're not benefiting from it. You're not getting anything out of it. So I think that the most important thing is that it should be a kid's choice on whether they want to get therapy or not.
I think that's well said. And then adding on what Lana said, do it in an environment that's safe and it's loving. And it's like, hey, look, there's somebody you can go and talk to. Just try it. The experience might be fun. You might walk out of there feeling actually amazing and seen and heard and not awkward. So I think that's good advice. While I have all three of you, I just would be remiss if I just didn't ask, what else? Like, what else can we do for Gen Z? I mean, this TikTok therapy is a whole revelation for me, and I hope it helps people watching. Is there anything else we're missing that as older generations that we can do to help you guys?
I would just like to add that if you're a parent, getting your child therapy is not a mark of you failing as a parent.
Great point.
I think not getting them therapy when they say, I want therapy, is a mark of failing, because, that is, like I said, maintenance, that is help to your kid, and it's preventative action so that they don't have these dark emotions dragging them down for the rest of their life. You can change your kid's life now, so just be open-minded, and maybe get on TikTok yourself if you want to see what it's about. I think we hold all these stereotypes and prejudices against things we don't know of, things that are foreign to us, but there doesn't have to be a generational gap. Just open dialogue and creating a comfortable environment and really trying to understand what your kid is going through. Like, no other generation has really had this giant pandemic, and they've had other social events impact their life, but this is something unique to us. So yeah, just trying to understand.
Wow, that's so great. Great point. Alana, what about you? What else can we do? What are we missing? Help me out.
One of the things I'd like to add is that when it comes to Gen Z, not to put us in this bubble and stereotype, but the fact that everyone finds comfort and everyone finds a sense of sanity in different things. So being more acceptance of maybe them wanting to sprout out to art, or a sport, or even little crystals that people believe in that have a certain power, and just religion, just being accepting of everybody as a whole, because everyone finds their sanity differently, so not being like, ew, you draw, that's nerdy,
Right.
They might find their comfort and their bubble in that.
Right. And we should be accepting of those things, of course.
Yeah.
Great point.
Thing.
Chris, how about you? What else you want to add? What are we missing?
Well, something that I think this is actually something that my therapist, it was an analogy that she had used, and I think it's actually really important. I think that like the older generations need to stop thinking that everything in life is going to be a right angle, that everything's just going to look perfect. It's going to be a 90-degree angle and it's going to be perfect. But there's always going to be deviations, right? Like it's not just a straight path. There are going to be curves and there's going to be bumps along the road. And I think that people need to accept the fact that there are going to be difficult times and not shy away from them, not ignore them, not bury them, push them down. I think that the most important thing is to try to face these problems. And like you were saying, for parents to just help their kids face these problems, to figure this stuff out, because it's a lot easier to kind of handle all of this stuff when you're a kid than it is when you're an adult, right? So we have to worry about school and all that kind of stuff, right? But school doesn't have the same stress as a job, right? Of taking care of a family, of things like that. So if we can try to just nail these things down and help our anxieties, our depressions, our mental illnesses right now, it's going to be really helpful for everyone, not just ourselves, but our kids and people in our lives.
And you guys are all so smart, man. I have such faith in the future of this country if it's in the three of your hands. This has been so enlightening, and I'm so impressed with all three of you. And I can't thank you enough. And I hope people watching this, both parents and your own fellow peers, just also walk away with, let's just be kinder to one another. You know, let's just be more accepting of people's differences. Let's not judge them, and let's just, help each other out, because we're all in it together. And you guys are leading the way for that. So thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.
Okay, fathers, video number 2. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Fathers of daughters. Got to listen to our kids. You see these young people here? Amazing. Amazing. Not every child's going to be able to come to their parents. That's why you got to be paying attention. Fathers of daughters, girl dads. These young people, they're telling you what parents need to be listening to, what parents need to be looking for. This was a great video for me. It was very, very comforting. And one of the things my generation needs to stop doing is dismissing school shootings, telling these young people to get over it. They're going to work through it. And the pandemic, that was real. Our world was never shut down growing up as children. We were never forced to be at home all day, every day, couldn't go outside, couldn't communicate. Yes, you had your computers and what have you. That's not the same intimacy with your friends every day. So we got to listen to our kids, fathers of daughters, parents. Got to listen to our children, man. Because these young people, look how verbal they are. Look how much energy they have. The young man said he was against therapy, but he came around. So they're telling you what their needs are. Not what their wants are, but what their needs are. And I believe that all children want to be held accountable by their parents. I've never met a child that I've worked with in 30 years. Of all the children I've worked with, from all socioeconomic backgrounds, that did not want to be held accountable. I've never met one. And when I tell people that, they think I'm crazy. I'm like, no. I've worked with young people for 30 years. I understand young people. I prefer young people over adults. I do. Young people are way easier to work with. They are. So fathers, we have an opportunity here, okay? To do the right thing, to listen, to learn. These young people, this was an incredible video. I'm glad I found it. I'm glad I came across it because it was necessary to share and it was needed, okay? So fathers, I'm just saying, take these videos in, process what is going on here. Okay, this is not going to apply to every family, but for those families it applies to, take it in, process what's going on. At the end of the day, we have to listen to our children and have that relationship with our children. There should never be a disconnect with our kids. That's one of the things. When I saw in K-12 education and the criminal justice system, I didn't understand it. You're disconnected from your children. I don't understand how you get there. Okay, fathers. One last video, okay? Let me get it ready.
them, a trafficker contacting them. So you just have to be a lot.
Okay, almost there, fathers. Okay, this is the last video, and then we're going to wrap up this live stream, fathers. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being present. Blessings, fathers.
Las Vegas is known worldwide as the entertainment capital of the world, the city of glitz, glamour, and neon lights. But there's a dark side to all of this. Las Vegas is new in the nation for human trafficking. The average age of children being enslaved in prostitution is 12 years old.
It is critical that we equip ourselves with the knowledge and awareness to protect our most cherished assets, our children.
That is why Las Vegas City Councilwoman Victoria Seaman is hosting a series of events like this one at Veterans Memorial Community Center on August 8th.
And the reason I decided to get more involved as a leader, I feel it's my responsibility. When I heard that we were #2 city in the nation for human trafficking, that really hit home with me. And our children are at risk.
Gathered at this event were critical stakeholders in the prevention and ultimate end to this crime that is the second largest criminal industry behind drug trafficking. Several nonprofit agencies were on hand to answer questions and offer services.
I am a survivor turned thriver, became advocate. I started the Be a Shero Foundation because I wanted to help other people in my commitment to help transform themselves and their lives.
Members of the Las Vegas Metro Police Vice Unit were also here with tips on how to have the difficult conversation with your child, warning them of the dangers on the streets and online, which is where most predators lurk these days.
I always say that parents used to have to worry about their kids whenever they were outside of the home, but now you have to worry when they're inside of your home. You can be washing the dishes, watching your kid on the couch, and there can be someone chatting with them, a trafficker contacting them. So you just have to be a lot more aware now, but social media is huge now.
Sergeant Greg Flores says they recovered 90 kids from sex trafficking in Las Vegas alone last year, some not even in their teens.
We've had juvenile victims, especially male victims we see, who are recruited over like PlayStation and Xbox. They're online, they're chatting with people that they think are their same age, and no, these are people that are grooming and recruiting. So just things to be aware of.
One of the other speakers was Lena Walther of Awareness is Prevention. She says young boys are increasingly becoming the target of a practice known as sextortion. They are lured by predators online who gain their trust and talk them into sending photos and videos, then tell them if they don't pay thousands of dollars, they will expose those images.
You know, it's very gradual, very gradual. And all of a sudden, the predator now sitting with a bunch of videos and pictures, hopefully nude for them, and then they start blackmailing. And they get caught up and they don't know what to do, and the easiest way out is suicide. It is horrific what's going on.
The documentary Groomed was shown to illustrate the techniques used by pimps to lure kids into prostitution, and there was time for questions from the audience.
If a child comes from a traditional family structure, the nuclear family, more likely, less likely they'll become involved in sex trafficking.
We've had prominent people in this community whose children have been trafficked. And so it can happen anywhere. But yes, the great majority of it is not coming from traditional homes.
Councilwoman Seaman says there will be more events like this in the future, and she encourages parents, teachers, or anyone who cares about kids to attend.
They need to have those difficult conversations. They need to be aware of what is happening with their children. I mean, because the signs are there and we're going to show parents what they need to look for, and we need to save our children. Our kids are not for sale.
Nancy Byrne here. I hope you enjoyed that story. For more great stories about the city of Las Vegas, don't forget to click on that box.
Okay, fathers. Another successful live stream at Girl Dad YouTube channel. So fathers, I needed to show that video. Okay, I've made several videos already speaking about social media. I may include them in the description. Okay, I only have those 3 videos that I've shown today in the description, but this video groomed, I didn't watch it. And if it's available on YouTube, I will include it in the description as well so you could watch it for yourself. Okay, fathers of daughters, girl dads. All right, another successful live stream. I'm done. Appreciate you, fathers. Want you to have a great week with your children. Validate them. Validate your baby girls. Validate your baby boys. Tell them you love them. Show them you love them. Okay? Got a lot on our plates, girl dads. All right, until next week's live stream, you know the routine. I'm out. I'm going to holla at you. Peace.